Hi there, it's Dr. Judith Briles, and we're back for another episode of the AuthorU, Your Guide to Book Publishing. And we're going to be doing something today that is so essential to everything you do, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a crowdfunding campaign, whether it's just sitting down and starting to get your tush in the chair and writing, whether it is making commitments. This topic is going to be essential for you. But before we start, we always start with the thank yous. We want to thank NZ Graphics for being here with us for the entire time we've been on the air with nzgraphics.com. Fabulous book design, cover design, award winning. I'm right now working with a book with him called The Joy Molecule to get it out for next month. And then Rebecca Finkel with F&P Design, and she is FP gd.com, and she's working on all my books right now. We made some awesome swag, and in a show we're going to be doing coming up, we're going to be talking about the elements of swag for your marketing and everything else, which you ought to be thinking about doing that maybe others aren't in this process. So with that, I always love to leave with a quote from my little book, Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And I always kind of open it randomly. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. Authoring and writing are like being in a kaleidoscope. Sometimes you feel fractured and broken. Other times you're swept into a labyrinth of color and wonder. And that's writing. Boy, is that writing. All right. So with me is someone who you've never had the pleasure of having on the show before. So Deborah Eckerling is going to be joining us. And as you can see, she's with us already. And she's going to be actually doing two shows with us during the month. And what we're going to be kissing on, I think, is this is a good start, is goals. Talking about she has a great book that she has out, and she's going to get into the DEB method for some of it as we set up and we go through. But her book, which I'd really recommend to all of you, if you ever feel stuck, you can't get going on some things, guides are helpful. Her book is called The Goal Guide, Your Goal Guide. So we want to jump into that as kind of a premise of where we're going, but let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a goal strategist, and she is a workshop leader, award-winning author, and also a fellowette podcaster. we can do that. She's the creator of the DEB Method for Goal Setting Simplified, which I am absolutely all for. Deborah speaks and consults on book proposals development, which we are going to be doing next go around to get into the why. Even if you never intend to work with an agent, why a book proposal could be your gold mine and secret sauce. She hosts the Gold Chat and Taste Buds with Deb podcast, and is the founder of Write Online Community, the Write On Online community for writers, creatives, entrepreneurs. And in addition to your goal guide, she's also the author of 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. So which came first, Deb?
Your goal guide. Gotta
Okay.
get the foundation for the goals. And it's really funny. So your goal guide came out in January 2020. So 6 weeks before we all had change by circumstance, out comes
Yeah.
my book to help people embrace change by choice or by circumstance. So it,
So
it
so that's the next. That was the next that came along in the process, right?
Right. Well, I love it because the book led to Goal Chat, which led to 52 Secrets, which just came out in January. So,
Well,
all the projects lead in and we just keep going, right?
yeah, I'm a big believer in goals, and I have, I had a whole theme one year that it's not, if you don't have a goal, your dreams can't become reality. If your vision is with a dream and all that. I am a big believer in goal setting, what it is, and also recognizing, and I would love to have you kiss on this during our hour together, is that I think it's important for people to recognize what their own bandwidths are. to handle their goals and to do a reality check. That one of the things right now is we're in the middle of as we tape this, and it'll be a past tense when we air it. But I have a huge event I do every other year called the Authors Hall of Fame. And we have our induction of our dozen new inductees. And the whole thing of herding cats, getting people there, getting your signups, doing the menus, um, organizing the auction, the silent auction that goes with it, takes so much bandwidth. And it has evolved since we started it. This will be our fourth one. We do it every other year. And it was, and I had the vision for it. I had the dream for it, Deb, but I couldn't do the execution until I had the bandwidth that I could really coordinate, follow through, and bring it off. So maybe we start there.
And as you're talking about this amazing event, all I can think of is if you're a writer and you have projects you want to work on, but you've got something as massive as this big event coming up, you also have to look at it the other way. I'm not going to get as much done in the other parts of my life or anything, right? But that's fine. That's why we prioritize. And I
Yeah.
am so all about setting yourself up for success and knowing what you can and you cannot do. I mean, that's the ball game, right?
Mhm.
When you know what
Absolutely.
you can do it.
It goes along with the two things. Every author I work with, whether it's marketing or bringing the book out of the ground and getting it published, two things I always tell them, you write this down. Don't do well what you have no business doing. That means if we're going to be, and my other phrase I love is myopically focused. If you're going to be myopically focused and get to that goal of getting your book written and published, there's some things that are going to have to go by the side. And you need to let people know that in the process. And then my other true keeper is if you never say no, your yeses are worthless. And I think this is where the noisms kind of bubble up when you have a big goal. Like, I've got all this going on and I have to put some stuff off during this time there, or I defer it. Not all, just defer it until it's afterwards.
I, I am a huge fan of the word no as well. And so the
Mm,
D and the DEB method, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but it's determine your mission. You can't get what you want unless you know what that is. And when you know your mission statement, when you've got your motto, the words that really are the essence of who you are and what you're creating, it's easy. You've got like a decision tree. So when opportunities come your way, you say, okay, is this in alignment? Yes, great. Um, is there a benefit? If it is not, indirect, fine.
mhm.
If neither of those are true, it's a no, right? It's got to be moving you forward personally or professionally. It's got to make your life better. And the other thing I love about saying no is you give someone else an opportunity to say yes. You're like gifting someone else something that they do well, that they love, that they've got the bandwidth for.
Saying no doesn't mean you're a bad guy.
No,
Um, and that unfortunately, if I want to talk about genders, women are less inclined to say no.
I've noticed that as well.
Okay, so let's talk about. I always ask all my guests to give me a couple of ideas that we want to run with through the show, and of course, the big one is so why? Why is it really important? And since authors and writers are who we're speaking to, that they're probably subsets of different type of goals, or even they could be numerically ranked, which are more important, I suspect. Well, I know, not I know that uh, on that, but they work with timelines. But let's get into that. So, why is it so essential, Deb, to have goals?
Well, I think especially for writers slash authors, usually we're working on something on spec. It's important to us. Well,
Ooh.
when it's important to us, we need to
Mm,
prioritize it.
mm,
Set the goals because if you're not, when you do not treat your goals with the same respect as you for your writing as you do with deadlines and meetings with the boss or with clients or team members or whatever, it's not going to get done. So you need to start with when you think of the life you want, what does that look like as an author, and what do you need to create to get there?
I love the idea of using the word respect, and that's for yourself, for your work, for wherever you're reaching for. It's the respect. And maybe if people use that, authors and writers would use that more, they might hit their goals.
You think, right?
I would think. I would think because, the problem with writing, a lot of people don't understand writing as a job. They don't get that. I mean, this could be the family. Even, the dog might have more respect for you. It'll just sit at your feet while you're working. Um, that they can't let other people know this is my dream, this is my love, this is my goal is to get this manuscript written in the next 4 months. Okay. And a loved one should say, what can I do to help you get there? Just saying.
Oh, absolutely. I remember so distinctly years ago, I was speaking to a group of writers about goals.
Mhm.
And I said, now raise your hand if your family doesn't get it. And almost everybody raised their hand. They think because you're a writer, your schedule is flexible and you can do
Totally.
what they need you to do. And I said, okay, step
Well,
one, right?
you know, but also they may not really truly believe that you're really serious, that you're just diddling around. That's another issue. Unless you really are making a living at writing. I mean, I've made a living at writing for decades now. So my group gets it.
Oh, I was absolutely so in the groups, the goal groups that I've created
Yeah,
over the years, which started
yeah,
with a writer support group back
yeah,
when I lived in Chicago, and when
yeah,
I moved to LA and restarted the group, it became for writers, creatives, and entrepreneurs because if you're
mhm,
one, you're all three. And
yeah.
I frequently got the I'm so glad you're here because my family doesn't understand.
Oh,
And
I love this reveal.
yeah, it's like, okay, come on. And one of the saddest was this woman, she said, my daughter just had twins, and she
Mhm.
thinks
Good
I
job.
am, yes, congratulations. And to
Mhm,
think about it, this was, they're at least 18 now. They're like grown-ups now. But my daughter had twins, and she needs me to help. So I'm glad I have this group so I can prioritize, and she came a couple months and then I never saw her again because she let the priority change from herself. And I hadn't thought about this in years. I mean, I think
mhm,
about the prioritizing because that's such a big deal. But there's so many people who think that, okay, it's a dream. Great, it's a dream. We love this dream. Go
mhm,
to your calendar and schedule time to work toward it.
mhm,
Set the goal. And the
mhm,
other thing that I say very frequently is look at your life. Can you do
mhm,
twice a week, a half a day? Or even if it's like a couple hours every day, what is feasible for you? And then
mhm.
you block out the time and you tell your family, I'm happy to help you. I am unavailable. Boom, boom, boom.
You're gonna love what I had. I made crime tape. I had, yeah,
That's amazing.
I had yellow crime tape. I travel with it, and it says author at work, do not disturb. When I write on cruises, by the way, it's very common for me to I do workshops on the Publishing at Sea cruise. And then often I will stay the week after to write because I'm a binge writer. I will have it all ready to go, and then I am myopically focused for 7 days, As soon as I wake, which will be between 4 and 5 in the morning, I will work until like 6:45 at night. The only stop is a health break or get more iced tea. That's it. That's it. And that with that, then my reward, because let's talk about rewards with goals. My reward is then I would have a really nice dinner, you know, or I'd see a show or something like, but that was it. So I would get, anywhere from 12 to 15 hours of unbelievable intensive writing in. And very often when I emerged, I had the complete draft of the next book done.
Amazing.
That's how, but that's how I write. I think what's
Right.
important when you set your goals for all of you to listen is you don't listen to other people that tells you how you should write in your time and your scheduling. That is BS. You know what your body and your mind needs, um, and you work with your schedule. Um,
That reminds me, I would get people in the live group, they would come in and say, when is the best time to write? And I would just, right, don't you just love hate that question? It's
I do.
like, it's going to, and that really kind of ties into the new book, 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. The secret to success is there is no one secret. You take different ideas out for a test drive and you do more of what works and you don't do what doesn't work. The other thing is rules and rewards. I am so huge on that because you need to, again, look at your life, what makes sense. One of the things that I think is really important for writers is networking because yes, you write, you have your process, but you're not going to get anywhere if you're not out there learning new things and meeting people and continuing conversations. And especially now that we're virtual, it is easy. I used in the before times when we only did things in person, I would say, okay, one networking event a week is good. Now I think three is completely feasible. One educational, one mixer, and one one-on-one conversation. And
Mhm.
so you do this 3 weeks. And if you are not like me and it's a little bit out of your comfort zone to be with so many people, the reward is you get to take a week off. So,
Aw.
you know,
Yes.
but you know what the rules are for getting things done, and only
Yeah.
you know what reward is going to be meaningful.
So maybe what we need to have is our a little goal for everyone here is I want you all to make up your own rules. And you may decide to publicize those rules on the refrigerator, or you could share it with your closest friends, that kind of thing. And Deb, I love what you just said about the networking type thing. That because of my circumstances, that I have a 94-year-old that the primary caregiver for, also with all the other stuff I do, and the things I've had to rearrange, but that I have made a rule that at least once a week I have a breakaway with others, like in person, in person. I know that once a week I will always have, sometimes it's twice a week, I have a full-blown Zoom with other authors. So you have that interaction. And then sometimes it's just one-on-one, and that could be your reward, whether it's a girlfriend or a boyfriend or fill in the rank friend. And also the reward could just be, maybe I'm just going to get out of here and walk around and go for a hike or something. It's all different.
Yes, only you know you. The other
Exactly.
the other thing that's super helpful in going back to the schedule, what makes sense for you? I do a lot of different things, which I love. That's very much within my personality.
Mhm.
We certainly would not want me to be bored ever. Um, I spend, it's not going to happen. I always have projects, but I have found that I do most of my writings on the weekends because during the week I have client meetings and speaking and videos and recordings and courses and all of the things. And
Exactly.
I like when I have quiet time. So and I call it, it used to be Zoom Free Friday, but then we're
Ooh.
recording this on a Friday. Um, one day a week, I don't I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to do my projects. In some weeks, it's got to be on the weekend, which is fine as long as during the week I have, DEB time. For
So
example,
yeah, I love that is to have one thing. I used to try to do that Mondays, and it's gotten, I would have no client meetings, you know, that and that kind of fell through after a while. But
And on Mondays at 4 Pacific, I do my Gold Chat live show where I bring in 3 guests to chime in on the topic of the week. And it's a lot of fun and it's a lot of energy. So Mondays are like my admin days. I do all of the emails and like the little itty bitty things that pile
Mhm,
up. That is my Monday. And
mhm,
sometimes, and I don't always like to send emails on Monday because it's everybody's busy day. So I will write them to send on Tuesday sometimes, depending on the person. So
mhm,
that works for me for that. My Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays tend to be like packed with things, which again, I
mhm,
love. And Fridays are usually like half and half. My mornings are busy, but my afternoons, I'll do worky things or I'll jump into my writing time sooner. But I know that I work best when I've got blocks of time to focus on my projects. So that is the way that I have arranged my life.
mm. Well, I like this a lot. Reminder, everyone with me is Deborah Eckerling, and she is the author of a couple of books. One is Your Goal Guide, which fits in perfectly with what we're talking. And then she has 52 Secrets out here for goal setting. So with that, what are the different, and maybe we've kissed on some of that, but what are the different types that author goals, writing goals? Let's put writing in here too, because we have variables here. Because
Hmm.
that all authors are writers, but not all writers are authors. It's a
Right.
different, and that what variances do you see? And maybe I'd love to ask you, how many years have you been doing this, Deb?
A long time.
Okay,
I know,
for,
okay. I have,
for us decade babes.
well, I started my first writer support group when I lived in Chicago in the 90s. And then
Okay.
after I restarted it in LA in 2002, people would come up to me and say, Deb, you're good at this. Can I hire you? I've been trying for years to write my book, and we got it done in 3 months. Or, Deb, you're good at this. Will you speak at my event? So I have been in the group. It was in person. It was a hybrid, online only, back and forthy. Love it, right? Uh, and my business background is communication and project management. So this was I also did. In 2018, my main communication client was going away, and I said, okay, this is an Owen for me to step into what I believe I was meant to do, which is help people figure out what they want and how to get it. And my mom said to me, you hate SMART goals, why don't you create DEB goals? And it turned out my name worked with what I had been teaching for years.
Yeah. And I love it. So we're going to get on those, but here's 1990 to 2020 is 3 decades.
Okay, can we say 95? That's actually more accurate. I'll take it. Oh, it's still 3 decades. You're right.
Decade. Look at I'm
When
four
did that
decades.
happen?
Yes, I know. Okay. So I'm 4 decades. So let's what has changed, if anything, in where authors and writers think about goals for themselves and their work?
Oh,
Anything?
everything. Everything. And I started the group because I was the events manager at Barnes& and Noble. And one day, one of my regulars came in and said, will you start a writer support group? I just finished this course and we all want to stay together and keep motivating each other. And I said, this is great. If you think people will attend, I'm happy to start it. I think maybe 2 people came from his group, but we got other people through the store. And for me, it was, what are you working on? Or what are your wins? What did you achieve? What are you working on? How can we support you? And that hasn't changed. I do a gold chat online mixer once a month, and we always start with, okay, what's your win? What are your goals? How can we support you? And then when there's time, we chime in on a different topic each
Mhm.
month. But that part hasn't changed. But the business of writing, I think, has changed a lot because you were you remember in the early 2000s when what were we calling it? Ego publishing started? That wasn't the right word, but when self-publishing first
Oh,
got I remember very distinctly all the bookstores, they were having webinars because you could make your own book, which was great. But I think that's when I think people start really self-publishing, but it also took a big hit because people were not doing it professionally.
oh no. Don't
It
you
was
remember
very,
when some of the stores had the espresso machines in them? And
oh
you
yeah,
you could take your Word document and feed it in and watch it go.
right.
Yeah, I'm getting the sound effects in. And then up, up. And the thing is that, I mean, self-publishing was vanity publishing, if you
That
remember.
was the word I called it ego, but that's the
Okay,
same thing.
the vanity press. And, and most of them look like crap. I'll just say it. And that the vanity people, they so grossly misused these authors and manipulated them, and they didn't know any better. They were so naive. They didn't know the questions to ask were. That's why I wrote my book, How to Avoid Book Publishing Blunders, they just didn't know. Well, I'm a huge fan, Deb, of Barnes and Noble. I love Barnes and Noble. And the new CEO who came in a few years ago really has given them a directive to work with authors and the local authors, and that whether you are traditional published, which you're in the minority at this point, way minority, to the independent area, which is, taking this huge step up because the quality of books that can be done today are stupendous.
I really love that. Because I think we had at least 5 years of crap coming out of the vanity presses, maybe more.
Well, COVID also created a boatload of it.
Yeah, that too.
Boatload.
People were bored, but I think like maybe 10-ish years ago, people got the memo that if you're going to self-publish, you make it look as professional as possible and see what happens. Now, my first two books I self-published because I had been working with authors and I said I was no longer comfortable working with authors without publishing my own book. So
Mhm.
my first one was Purple Pencil Adventures Writing Prompts for Kids of All Ages because you'll love this. In my writing group, one of my people said, my daughter's not getting enough creative writing at school. Will you coach her? Give her so I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to start a blog called Purple Pencil Adventures with a different writing prompt. And when I got to the
Love it.
point where I'm like, I need to write a book, I had the prompts. But this is the thing. I like, okay, piece of cake. I've got these prompts. I can absolutely do it quickly. It still took me 8 months because I wanted to do it right. I took the prompts, I added more meat, I added more context, and lo and behold, a book. My second book, Write on Blogging, and this is really funny, having nothing to do with my current title. It was 51 Tips to Create, Write, and Promote Your Blog. Now, both of these I e-published because for the first book, it was the first book. And I like the idea of you've got this thing on the go in your pocket. If your kids are bored, give them a writing prompt and they can draw or write or whatever. And the second one was on blogging. So I think, and it's got links in it. So it never occurred to me to try and do something people could hold. So I loved that I had those experiences, and I was actually planning to self-publish the DEB method when I met an agent, and he asked me what I was working on. And then he asked me, Deb, what is your goal? And I said to be the first person people think of when they hear the word goal. And he said, why don't you send me your book proposal? And let's see if we can get you a mainstream publisher for this. So I wrote a book proposal. This was spring 2018, shortly after I
Mhm.
rebranded. And by the end of the year, Mango showed interest in that book. Like I said, I mean, talk about timing for a book on goals to come out right before the world imploded. You can't write this stuff.
Nope, you can't. And well, there's a lot of stuff you can't even. I mean, Hollywood can't even come up with the stuff that's going on now. But
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
agree.
Okay. Going back to my question, so over 30 years where you say everything
And nothing.
and nothing. So that was then, the old photography books that go in and take the picture of the town. It looked like this 100 years ago, and now this is what it looks like, or this is the landscape of the valley 100 years ago, and now this is what it is. So what's our landscape? What was the landscape for authors 30 years ago, versus today that would tie in with the whole goal thing?
Well, and like I said before, it's like everything and nothing has changed. Words have not changed. The desire to get your words out in the world and create an impact from the things that you know, or if you're a creative writer, to share the story. This also amuses me. I thought I was going to write the Great American Novel. I was one of those kids in high school who took double
Many
writing
think that.
courses,
Yeah.
right? Double creative writing courses. And then I got my freelance writing because of the goal group. I had been writing the spec articles because that was my goal is
Mm.
I'm just going to write these slice of life things, and eventually I'm going to start writing for whoever. And I had just finished writing a screenplay, and I was at an event, and this guy was selling magazine subscriptions, and I said, "Are you looking for writers?" And he was, and I was prepared because I had these spec articles. Um, I'm sorry, I tangented. The point is, if you are a writer, you write. That has not changed. You prioritize, you do the
Right,
work, you learn what you
right.
need to know to write in your format or genre or whatever. But it's easier. Technology has made it easier. I also worked in publishing during the transition. So we were typesetting and doing digital we were in that transition at point we were doing both before we went all digital. Um, you can self-publish. We've got the tools and the resources. As you said during COVID, lots of people took advantage of downtime to write things.
Mhm.
Um, and just because you have the desire does not necessarily mean that you should do it. But knowing that if you want to put your work out there, and this applies to everything. I mean, when I moved to LA, I was writing for a local paper, and it was a great way to meet people because everybody wanted to meet the reporter. Now, you blogger, podcaster, you can have access to anyone that you want to meet, whatever your need. I think it's a little different for nonfiction because you do different things as a nonfiction writer to build your platform. You interview people, etc. But even fiction authors can use the power of the blog or podcast or whatever to get themselves out there. You've got access to different people for information, but also to interview, to build community, to build your network. So the opportunities are endless. If you can dream whatever you want, if you've got enough time, energy, and money, you can create anything. But what is it? You need like two, at least two, right? Something might take longer if you don't have one of the others. I know I'm completely botching the quote, but if you've got the desire, you can create anything now because we have technology.
Mhm.
I think I finally answered your question. I got there.
Got it. Okay. But you keep saying self. To me, self people still create a lot of kitchen table stuff that looks
Yes,
like it. So for the authors I certainly work with, they are not self-publishers. They are creating their own independent presses, most cases. I mean, we have access to high-end designers, high-end cover interior. We can do anything, and it's like, even with Mango, your publisher, they distribute everything through Ingram Spark. Okay.
right.
That is all for that is all for self-publishing, people. That is all for independent publishing. And of course the big granddaddy who sells everything is Amazon. For the majority that when I look at when I thinking out loud, 30 years that there was no digital publishing. There was nothing. There was nothing that you only, as an author, that you only had two avenues 30 years ago, starting where Deb and I started. 30 years ago was you could go to Vanity Press because you didn't know what to do, or you try to reach out to the mainstream or traditional publishing, and the odds of being picked up were low. I was fortunate to be picked up by St. Martin's Press right away at an auction, and I went with them. And my agent was William Morris, huge agency. So I was well kept for 18 years, and then I woke up and realized, well, wait a minute, I need to learn the business of publishing. And once I did, I went over the bridge and have never looked back because I made so much more money that I created all the 17 countries bought my book. That was all from triggers that I could create. And we sold over 1 million copies. All right, so I'm an independent. I have an independent press. Mine is called Mile High Press. I live in Denver, and that's the way we publish now. So, Deb, the line I use for all these authors who go the independent route, and people say, "Well, who's your publisher?" Number one, no one cares who your publisher is. They don't care. They don't buy books because of a publisher. They buy books because they use the title, they're going to solve the problem, or the author by reputation. That's the way they buy books today. That's marketing 101 for this millennial. And or until we have another half something. But that's the way it is. So it's you being savvy and smart. So here's what I would say. If someone says, "Well, who publishes you?" And you can give the name. That's why you never use your name. Actually, I love the name of Mango Publishing. I think that's a cool name. Um, but it's kind of, somewhere, but it's not you and it's not your company's name. I just had this discussion yesterday with a client of mine. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that you can just say something like this, I'm published by blah, 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 an independent publisher that works with authors. I'm honored to be worked with them because they work with authors who publish books like mine. That's all you need to say. You don't need to go around, I'm this. I think check that and remove that because if you're working with people like Deb or myself, you're going for the quality. You're going to be that you can compete with what is popping out of New York. Now, getting the spray thing, unless you've got a secret sauce, Deborah, that you can do it print on demand, because I sure don't know about getting sprayed edges that way. But I'm open to learn on that. But that's the hot thing in the bookstores right now. And they're calling them spreages. Spreages, Spredges. Spreages. So if you go in and get a book, like this is my latest book, third in the series, but the edges would have all this kind of fancy dancing design. So, I could have the sunrise, I could have the hawk, I could put the wolves on it, I could do whatever. But if you go in a bookstore, I mean, they're almost like collector's items that people are going in trying to find them. That's the hotsy totsy thing is
Ooh,
the spreages or sprayed edges is what they're called. Are you familiar with this, Deb?
I am not. That's why I'm giving you weird
Ooh.
looks. Okay.
Okay.
It just feels like a waste of ink, but if people want to use that, I think that the differentiator is self versus independent.
Hmm.
And
Huge.
and
That is huge.
and as you were saying, if you can be your own independent publisher when you are professional, when you're and why wouldn't you? You're putting all this time and energy into a book, and as you mentioned before, my thing is with goals. I also do book proposal consulting, and whether you are planning to independently publish or go a hybrid or go traditional, you need a
Mhm.
roadmap, which is why, goals are roadmap. See, I
They
love,
are. Oh,
I,
they're so important.
and for me, it's like, this is the coloring book, color it in.
Oh,
Whatever you
yes.
are doing, you're spending your precious time and energy on it. Why wouldn't you want to have the best product possible? And it is possible no matter how you decide to publish.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that are the barriers and the roadblocks. What stops a lot of authors from getting there?
Well, we mentioned family slash lack of support
Yeah,
before. I think
yeah.
that is huge. I was very lucky. My mother was my biggest cheerleader. I always say she was the cheerleader's cheerleader. And artist always believed the whole follow your passion. And in I
Goodness.
know that I was very lucky that I had her, that not everybody has that. So I will cheerlead whoever, because people need to realize that they are worthy of spending the time and energy to make their dream come true. And I think that's a big thing. I think time is another barrier. But again, look at your calendar and maybe you can only write for a couple hours a week. Well, guess what? That's 2 hours a week more than you were writing. I,
Exactly.
Another one of my little rules are I say, look, and you can look at your week at the beginning of the week, mark
Hmm.
out your goal time. If
Hmm.
you, but commit to whatever it is. If you need to move the
Exactly.
appointments, you can, but you can
Hmm.
never delete them.
Hmm.
So something
Oh, I
happened,
love that.
you
Love
need
that.
to
You
move
can move them.
something,
You
right?
can move them. You can't delete. Love
Yes.
that. And I do, I have an online scheduler. We all have our phones that they go in and they go in and it's JB time and it's in purple, by the way, when it goes um, but JB time is doing that. And I just think that's so important for all of you to honor that, to see that and what you have. All right, so
Wait,
you
I've got one other calendar trick that I
I
absolutely
love
have to
calendar
share.
tricks. Okay,
Yes.
calendar tricks.
Okay, and so at the first day of every month, I start an appointment at 6 o'clock that night, and it says the month, year, dash,
Hmm.
wins.
Mm.
So every day I get the calendar reminder to write down my wins. So I will write down one, two, or three wins, and then I will save it as the next day. So you get the reminder again. It's a win list. I used to keep it as a Google Doc. There are different ways you can do this, like a journal of it. I love the calendar reminder because it's a little in your face. You get the notification. But by doing this, and they can be personal wins, writing wins, whatever wins you want. It could be I survived the day because sometimes that is the win. But
Yeah, I got up.
right, exactly. But especially on those weeks where you're like, I'm not getting anywhere, you look at your win list. Oh, I wrote 2 hours this day and I sent out three queries and I did this and I did this. Okay, I'm getting there. And that's the motivation to keep going. Which is why I start all of my groups with what is your win? What are your goals? Starting with the win gives you that energy and that faith that what you're creating can turn into reality. And then you could use that energy to work toward your goals and you've got that fuel.
Well, I love those two questions. I think they're what are your wins and what are your goals? So is and this maybe, you could do them. So you do this every month? Is this what you do in the month? You said?
Yes, I start because it's too I used to do it as this Google Doc and then it was paging down and it was taking blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
once a month, that's enough words that you don't get the red line saying you put too much text in this Google document or in this calendar appointment. But once a month I start it up and yes, I will admit it here first. Every now and then I do miss a day on my win list. Sometimes I catch it up. Sometimes I just move forward, which is one of my other rules. I call it the 5 of 7 rule because people try,
Okay.
When you try and commit to something every single day, you are potentially setting yourself up for failure because you get busy and sometimes you miss things. And it on the lowest common denominator, I say, people will say, well, I can do 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes a day is easy. Well, let's say you skip Sunday and you miss Monday, and then you're up to 45 minutes on Tuesday. If you did not have 15 minutes on Sunday, you do not have an hour on Wednesday. Better to forgive yourself and say, okay, I can do the 15 minutes. So the 5 of 7 rule, it's just code for you
I
don't
like
have
it.
to work on your goals every day. Knowing that, I think also gives you some freedom. It releases some pressure. You do what you can do, you commit to it, you do the things, and you get where you want to go. Simple.
And so forgive yourself. That's what I'm hearing you say. You got to forgive yourself. And it could be, and of course, in that 5 minutes, look, life happens, everybody. Life happens, and that there are hiccups that come along that, okay, the call comes in. I actually, Deb, I had a call from my grandson a couple of weeks ago, and here's how it started. Grandma, you said if I ever needed help to call you. That immediately I literally pushed everything aside. Everything. I pulled out a yellow pad and I just said, talk to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It totally whacked to help start working through. It took several days to help work this through that we could get to a resolution. But I instantly knew what I had to do was going to change a lot of things for me very quickly. So
And everything resolved itself. But
it's
sometimes that's the prior. This is
it's
my way of asking, is he okay? Is everything good?
oh, he is. Oh, yes, he is okay. Yeah, it involves school. He's a senior in college, and his parents never filled out the stuff, and he lost everything. He lost all his grants. He lost everything. So I had to work backwards with him, and I said, I need to know what you need right now, and when do you need it? And he said, and we had to work it backwards, and I said, I will take care of it. And you come and pick up the money. But we have to go forward. So we have all this stuff going on. I mean, and so that's a life happens. Wasn't on my calendar. It wasn't on the goals
But
to
that's how you do goals, though. You
exactly.
start with the goal, you figure out the benchmarks and the action items that need to get
That's
done to reach
exactly
each
what we do.
benchmark.
Right. And then I had to ask the question, Deb, and should I assume your sister is in the same boat? And he said yes. Okay. Okay. So those are the things that life happens for all of us, and we all need to recognize that as it comes into play. But I love the 5 of 7. You can give yourself a little slack. Sometimes you're not going to do it. And things do. I get pulled. But I'm a big believer in to sometimes letting yourself just move into the moment. Take 15 minutes, and sometimes it's me just I'm a huge tea drinker, whether it's hot or iced, just to go sit on my deck and just be in the moment and enjoy the deck, enjoy the leaves. The shock for me when I woke up this morning and I walked out on the deck, it was like, whoa, I felt the fall snap. It's too early for the fall snap, the weather. It's too early here for it. I looked around at my trees, Deb. My God, they're turning yellow. It's August.
Ah.
I know. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. So,
Uh,
but
and the hack though, I love that you know what you need to do when you need to refresh yourself. I think writers forget. I have a, we love the rules. I like the power of 2 minutes. And that is the 2 minute freak out. If you need to have a
ooh,
panic attack, you get
ooh,
2 minutes And then you have to stop and you can't freak out for at least 24 hours after that. Usually, um, it's longer than that, but every now and then you need to have a panic attack, have it,
Yep,
but
yep,
make it quick
yep.
and get on
I,
with it.
for Ryan and Bella, I had to clear the deck with
Mhm.
that to take, knowing what the needs were, what we can do in this. And then now we go back in with some other backup and see if we can appeal. And oh, you're networking. And I said, when you're talking to the school, you are not talking via email. You are not texting. You're getting your tushes in there and you're having face to face. Makes all the difference.
It does. I mean, we need
Yeah,
this. I get so excited when I have a phone call. I mean, that's how we met is via the phone because
I know.
ooh, talking to a person, not and I love on camera, don't get me wrong, but talking to a person, we forget that talking to a person it's fun. It's a joy. You could make someone's day just by picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, how are you?" And maybe that is your break. I also have to give you the counter to the 2 minute freak out is the 2 minute
Oh,
dance.
okay. The
So
2 minute what?
the 2 minute dance break.
Okay,
So
I'll take that.
if you need a burst of energy, you just say hello Alexa or hello Siri, play and give it a genre or a song. And whether you need an energy burst after the 2 minute freak out or you're about to give a presentation or you're ready to start writing and you need a burst of energy, it's going to get you excited and real just feeling so into yourself because you cannot dance and frown at the same time. And if you let's say you've done the dance break and you're really jazzed, but you don't know what to write, write anything and then let it bring you to what you need slash want to write.
Okay, exactly. I mean, that is so, and I like saying telling Siri play something. So whatever your favorite is, and that also, if you need that moment, like I have a couple of pieces that I love, classical pieces. I love some of the movements in them. I could just kind of put my head back and close my eyes and just let that, and then it's almost like taking a little nap. Just saying that you
Yeah.
you can you can do these things. All right, so let's let's talk about the review. I think we've been kissing all this, but I want to get all into your DEB method because we've got 3 minutes. But is there anything else for reviewing, refreshing, or hitting the pause on your goals that you'd like to add?
Well, I just real quick. So the D and the DEB method is determine your mission, and
Oh,
you could do it for your life or you could do
mm,
it for your project. What is the purpose behind it? The E
okay.
is explore your options. So, okay, you've got this vision. What is it going to be? So, for a book, maybe it's nonfiction, fiction. What are the different ways that you can write it or publish it or bring it out to the world or build your platform, whatever it is? And then brainstorm your path is make a plan. So, basically, write down every single action item you can think of, personal and professional, and divide and conquer. So,
Okay, and the
you,
and the initial word you used for that to be all this encompassing everything was what?
what it's DEB method. It's determine your mission, explore your options, brainstorm
Explore.
your path.
Got it. Okay.
So get everything out there, divide, conquer, put all your projects together so you can arrange it. Action items to
Mhm.
benchmarks to short-term goals to long-term goals.
That's when I love to use sticky notes. In fact, as I'm talking to you, I can look across my office and I have a big board and it is all color coded with sticky notes. And it's actually determining the path for the next book. That's how I do
Love
it.
it. Yeah, my board of everything is here, and it's got my mission, my motto, my rules, my goals, things that are top of mind for me. And I always like reference it because it's this part of my office.
Well, that's what's so essential. You've got it in play. You know where you're going. It's a huge difference. All right, so we're at our last minute. So Thank you. It's been a great hour. I love this kind of a chat hour that we can go in where actually it's kind of organized, but we're all over the place because things trigger. And that's what networking does, which is kind of cool on
So
that. But
much fun. So
I
much
know.
fun.
So when Deb comes back, we're going to talk about something I think is really important, besides all the goal setting. I'm a huge believer in that, but is really book proposals. You know, that a lot of people they traditionally that when we were with mainstream publishing, we always wrote a book proposal, always. And my philosophy is I think we all should do it. I don't care if your intent is to independently publish what you're doing, but it is now you're creating the 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 guide map for your book and your marketing and your success. So we're going to get into book proposals next time. So I'm kind of excited.
Oh, I am so excited. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
call it coloring book framework, whatever it is, or your goals. You need a plan. When you have a plan, you can turn the life you want into reality. And it really is that simple.
Yeah. So I'm going to say thank you, Deb,
Thank thank you.
for being with us, and I look forward to spending another hour with you.